Good morning, and welcome back to From the Depths with your host, Gustorms Games. I like being say that I'm your host. Anyways, today we're going to be doing something a little bit fishy, and I hope that you've grabbed yourself a nice foxy cup of coffee for the morning, and you'll sit back, relax, and enjoy me going over a little build showcase of these little ships that are for my sail-only Neater campaign. So we're going to start out with the little minnow out here who's being chased by the sunfish over there. So this little minnow here, it has no detection on it. It's got an AI, a very simple AI. It just has like a flyover AI, I believe. If I turn this back on, we're going to here. Yeah, attack, run, and flyover. Just standard AI. It is only powered by, and stays aloft by, one electric engine with one battery attached to it. So it uses very little power, and it's very inexpensive. The majority of the cost is the weapons, and AI, things like that, which is about 97% of the build is various weapons, AI, and as well as control surfaces and the like. The armor is very cheap, and we've got, some sails here, as is required by the sail-only Neater campaign. All your forward momentum must be supplied by sails. So it's got two sails. It has the nice sail winch little trick with sails, so if the back portion of it gets broken, the rest of the sail will still work and you still get some forward momentum. Did the same thing with the sunfish back there. It's just something to keep in mind. If you don't like the look of this, you can always go back with whoops. You can always go back and you can take the water sail attachments and you can just make them a decoration with Control Shift X, and then you can go hide original block and it'll get rid of those and make it look like it's not a sail winch. You can also get rid of these sail blocks entirely and completely hide them in a build if you want, so it's just the sail, by doing the exact same thing with any block that you want. One of the greatest blocks to use for that would be, say, one of these blocks. Would work great. To some extent. Not really, actually. Anyways. Yeah, this has all of its hovers powered by this one propeller. This propeller is actually only attached because it's got 100% clearance, so 100% efficiency. The way that you do that is with these blocks. I've hidden them to these strut blocks. Where's that strut? There's the strut, see? See, it has all of this attached with strut blocks. There's strut blocks on either side, and the back, and the front. Actually, the front doesn't have one. There's one on the back as well, but then they're hidden by the. Oh, so what the? Sorry, my microphone gave out for a second. Anyways, it's attached to the propellers. Still spins, but it's attached with the strut blocks. That way you get 100% of the clearance. You can also still attach blocks here, and it still doesn't count against the clearance. So if I put a block here, still 100% clearance. Low air density reduces some of the thrust, but we're not up that high, so it soon will be perfectly fine. So anyway, that's a way to get around that thrust issue with the propellers. Since propellers have been designed differently, they don't get proper efficiencies if you build a certain way. So that's something to take note of. This ship also has a little bit of ammo storage, just one box. It's really lightweight and very flimsy, very cheap, only 5k. Its missiles are made only of the finest and simplest of pre-generated missiles. It's got a quadra set of missiles that are on stagger fire, just the standard stagger fire, which is like 0.01 seconds or something like that. Just explosive, active radar, some AP and guidance. This thing actually fires a lot faster than the Sunfish. So we've got all the things covered on this ship. We'll move on to the Sunfish. So Sunfish has a lot of redundant detection since the minnow has no detection of its own. It's got vehicle share, so we're gonna have that snooper setting. Any ship with snooper settings is gonna be able to detect this pretty easily. What's it called? I'm just gonna go in here. AI detection component, wireless snooper. So anything with a wireless snooper should be able to detect our airships fairly easily. The minnow and the sunfish. So this thing's got a retro reflector detector on here for no reason, just because I just wanted it. It also has the laser rangefinders, 2 visual cameras, 360 degrees. It's surrounded by glass, so it can see out in all directions. So it has 360 degrees in every direction that it can detect, having the 2 on either side, like that. We've got as well a gimbaled visual camera on the bottom here, as well as an active radar gimbal down here. We've got 2 active radar detectors on either side here and here. Wow, that's pretty scary. Let me get out of build mode here. We'll just go back to this visual. So the active radars are nice. They can just detect things on the other side. So it's got 2 different detection methods. We can't detect anything underwater. Any submarines will basically be invisible to these ships, but they're also extremely cheap, and we're not too worried about that early game. So these are really for the early game. The weapons on this system are, we've got fragmentation, cram cannons, we've got explosive cram cannons, we've got kinetic cram cannons, and we've got EMP cram cannons. We've got all of the cram cannons that you can imagine. This is a set of 20 on this side, another set of 20 on this side, and another set of 20 bomb chutes on the bottom. So between all of these cannons, this thing has, I think it's about 20k damage on one side, 20k damage on the other side, and 20k damage on the bottom. Sorry, 200k damage, because it's 5 times 20. Sorry, 100k damage, apologies. So it's 5,000 times 20, about 100k damage. That was with only kinetic, so it has higher damage potential because of the fragmentation. Yeah, the frag cram, as well as the explosive crams, they do more damage. The EMP's basically the same as the kinetic. There's a little bit of kinetic damage on top, but not much. So we've got 20 on this side. Each volley does about 50k damage each time to kind of deep water guard crafts, since they're not very susceptible to EMP damage, and it's not such a big deal that they have EMP. EMP, I haven't really seen much. It's probably fairly effective against the, what are they called? Yeah, my memory's pretty bad. Onyx Watch. So the Onyx Watch has ships that are pretty susceptible to EMP, so EMP should be handy there. Yeah, this thing, even though these cram cannons take forever to reload, if I go into the build mode here, we're just gonna look inside here. Each of the 3 cannons, the left and the right, and the ventral, which is the bottom, cram cannons, they all share a single pellet between the 3 cannons. Each set of 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4, is all controlled by 1 local weapon controller, so it reduces the cost. These detection systems are also attached to those all-in-one weapon controllers. Helps reduce the cost a bit, so we don't need any extra wireless receivers or anything like that. And the cram cannons, they have 2 cylinder gauge increasers on either side, because those are the only things that don't attach to each other. They also have 2 payload compactors for each cannon. Actually, sorry, I lied. There's only 1 payload compactor for that one, except for the bottom ones. The bottom ones have 2, so they do more damage. Get a little bit more damage out of the bombs. Because these only have single payload compactors, I think. Oh, or am I just forgetting to add them in? I could add them in, but I'm not going to. It just seems like a lot of work. Since I already built it. 8k damage, and this has 8.4. And that's, so we're missing out 400 damage on the broadsides. The AI on this craft is controlled by breadboard, so it flips back and forth from attack run and broadside. So broadsides either side. Depending on how much damage it takes. And it tries to fly over for 30 seconds. It's on a timer, 30 seconds, and then there's a switch. And it just has one and a not gate, and just flip-flops between the two. So this is a pretty easy way to do a flip-flop. You set the threshold, you have the open value 0, and you have a constant of 1 going through. So once the timer reaches through there, it flips to the other value, and then you get 1 being sent to here, and if you have the other value set to a not gate, it'll be 0. If the value is 1, if it's 0, this value will be 1. Basically saying true, right? Binary code, it's either true or false. It's the only two options you get. Okay. Now, maybe we could just look at the behaviors here. So the attack run, I think it's basically standard. Actually, attack run altitude above or below the target, we want to do probably 20. And this is set really high, so it'll initiate a broadside very early on from pretty much any distance. Broadside AI is very unreliable for some reason. It'll just try to run away and just show your backside to the enemy all the time. So, broadside AI is finicky and don't know why. The broadside angle is 70 degrees for this ship, so it tends to get a little bit closer. But since the crane cannons only have 30-degree firing arcs, I can't make it closer, right? And these are pretty cheap because they're all single barrels, so their accuracy should be a little bit off, which, like in a big group, so they'll fire in a big spray pattern because they only have one barrel. But it makes it cheaper because if we look at, let's look at this value, let's look at stats. So the cost of this material cost is 294, so that's the material cost, and its damage output is 8k. It does take 3 minutes to reload, so you only really get one volley per combat from either side and maybe the bottom before the combat's over. So this is really only supposed to just pack a really big punch at the very beginning and then just hang out for the rest of the match. This little guy here reloads a lot more quickly. It's about 10k damage, the minnow does. And the missiles just reload quickly. So the Sunfish can restock the minnow basically indefinitely for combat. And this thing will just take a bit of a punch. It might fall down into the water. That's fine. It'll just sit there for a while, you know, soaking up some damage. These weapons are pretty durable. You can take out a chunk of this can go missing, and it still has, you know, half of its cannons left. And depending on how it lands in the water or on the ground, it can still fire and fight before it's knocked out. And it has quite a bit of different detection systems. So, it's fairly redundant. It does have a weakness where if it gets shot on the head, it dies. It just dies instantly. Since it's only protected by, you know, almost 2 layers of material. Not quite. The propulsion on the Sunfish, pretty straightforward. 2 sails on either side. And it's below kind of the middle of the ship, so it gets a little bit lift from the bottom 4 sails. The inside also has 2 sails, so that these are pretty well protected, so it still has forward momentum even if the arms get shut off. It's kind of useful. And there's also a third one in the middle here that's attached to the the dorsal area. Makes it a little bit better. The power for the minnow comes from the batteries. It shares the power with the Sunfish through the batteries. In combat, these are supposed to be only battery powered, so you don't have an infrared signature, but I haven't figured out the automatic control blocks very well, because the fuel generators just won't turn off, or they don't turn on, and they don't maintain the fuel engine generators during non-combat, because these are supposed to run all non-combat, maintaining the electrical energy, but they tend not to turn on for whatever reason. Has something to do with the priorities or the automatic control blocks not being set up properly. This has just a couple of repair bots, just a pair of repair bots just to repair things. This is pretty cheap. Pretty much can repair anything in the ship. There's one kind of in the back end here, and there's one in the middle right here. And that's just to keep the ship going. Nothing too fancy, nothing too overboard. A lot of the resources, little resource crates, are actually in the bottom here, pretty well protected. Got a material container here. And here, basically everywhere there's AI, there's also a material container along here. And since this craft doesn't really have a power consumption, it pretty much can stay out for a very long time without having to come back to port. So basically it's supposed to kind of loiter, engage enemies if it has to, but mostly just loitering around, taking control points, and being kind of a pain in the ass to kill, because it's got a huge firepower, so it should do a bunch of damage to anything that attacks it. Probably more damage than can be kind of repaid from taking this ship out. So that's at least the hope. Even though it takes like a stiff breeze to take this thing out, since it's only 2k. Wow, it's almost, 20k. It's almost 30k material cost. But that's because this is 5k for this little buddy here. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed your Foxy cup of coffee and have finished it this morning. And I'll see you guys next time. And hopefully for the sail only neater, which I'm pretty much crazy to do. I've had a lot of fun recording this, even though it's taken me probably about 20 tries to record this little episode, because I keep having problems with my recording software, or the microphone cuts out, or disconnects, or anything else. And I hope that the sound quality is okay, since the microphone's a bit iffy right now. I'm working on getting that fixed. But I hope you guys enjoyed this little episode, and you can come join me for the sail neater later on. Anyways, adios everybody. Goodbye.